Hello and welcome to Imola for round 3 of the Formula One World Championship, the San Marino Grand Prix, the start of the European season, and for many people, the place where the season really starts. I'm Matthew Lorenzo, with me John Watson, and behind us, the place where Gerhard Berger had a catastrophic accident this time last year.
Yes, Matt, this is the famous Tamburello corner. It's a curve more than a corner. It's flat out, 170, 175 miles an hour, and last year Gerhard Berger had, I would say, the biggest fright of his life, and probably a lot of other drivers around him at the time. Luckily, he survived it. He's racing here this weekend, and he's going to be very competitive.
What are your thoughts on this year's race?
Well, as you said, really, Imola is the start of the World Championship, and I think that the first two races, Phoenix and Brazil, were really just sort of an appetizer, and we've had 7 weeks, in fact, since Brazil. The teams have been here on 3 separate occasions testing. They've all got the 1990 specification car, which means more room for the driver, there's more room for the legs to come back in the event of a front shunt, bigger cockpit areas, stronger rollover hoops behind the driver's head in case the car turns upside down, and really, most importantly of all, the fuel cell in which the fuel is contained has now got to be almost double the strength that it was last year. So what we saw last year, Berger's car catching fire after that huge shunt, hopefully we won't ever see again in the future.
I echo those sentiments. Thanks, John. Well, Eurosport will be at every Grand Prix this season. Our extensive coverage includes both major practice sessions and the live build-up to the big race. This is how the action is coming to you this weekend. In this programme, highlights of the first qualifying session, plus all the news from trackside here at Imola. On Saturday at 9:30 in Europe, 8:30 in the UK, you'll be able to catch up with the latest developments and all the on-track action as the drivers battle it out for pole position. On Sunday, join us at 2 o'clock in Europe, 1 o'clock in the UK for the build-up to the big race, which starts half an hour later. The entire race live on Eurosport. And don't forget, on Tuesday night, highlights of the whole weekend, plus all the post-race stories. Well, here in San Marino, or as most people would say, Italy, there's always a buzz about this race. This, after all, is Ferrari's home track, and the Tifosi have been queuing since the early hours to get into the circuit. No doubts about who the local heroes are, even though one is English, the other French. Most of these fans are here for the weekend. The area inside the circuit are massive tents and makeshift homes, and to keep them happy, all sorts of food is available, and there's an exotic range of motor racing paraphernalia. Now here's John to take us round the circuit.
And the Nini and the Benetton is going to take us round that lap as we go across the start-finish line, taking 6th gear, and we're approaching the Tamburello corner, the famous corner from last year and Berger's accident. This is flat out, 6th gear, 175 miles an hour, and the cars will build up speed to about 185, through the Villeneuve curve, and then hard on the brakes, a favourite overtaking spot, down into 3rd gear, turning in, getting the power on, careful not to get too much on, then back into 4th gear, accelerating flat out up the hill into 5th, under the bridge, and then into the double left Piratella, a very tricky corner because the road falls away from you and it's easy to run wide. Then up into 5th gear, then hard on the brakes for the chicane, back into 3rd gear, and this then leads into the double right-hand uphill Acqua Minerale corner, a famous corner on this Imola circuit. Then back into 5th gear and another short straight before again another hard braking into the high chicane. 2nd gear, tight right left, up to 3rd, 4th, the hand hardly leaves the gear lever at this point, into 5th gear, and accelerating now down under another bridge which leads into the double left-hand Ravazza corners, the first part in 3rd gear, then back into 4th, short shifting, not using full revs, keeping the power on and building up speed now as we come out of the second part, up to the Marlborough chicane. The first part's taken in 5th gear, it's very fast, but now again heavy braking and down to 2nd gear for the second part, and this leads us on to the start-finish line. Now we're behind, I think it's one of the Delaras, I don't know who's driving it, but we're going to watch Nannini. He's catching up to the Delara, but he can't really pass at this point on the circuit. He's got to wait until he exits the corner, but he wants to get himself into the right position to make that passing maneuver, pulling out to the left, but what's he doing? I don't know what he's doing, but he's having one of the biggest accidents I think Nannini's ever had. That was very strange. He came up, pulled out to the left to pass the Delara. He started to look across. He looked across twice. And as he looked across, he seemed to turn left. He put the car, he was looking for more track, in fact, than there was. And as a consequence, he got onto the grass. The car went out of control, and it just started to attack the concrete barriers all the way down the left-hand side of the track. And he's got a very, very sad-looking Benetton. In fact, that car, I don't think is going to be running again at any part of this. In fact, probably not for the whole weekend.
Let's have a look at the championship positions so far. No real surprise about the man in the lead, Ayrton Senna, with 13 points. His erstwhile teammate Alain Prost is second with 9 points in the Ferrari. And then three tie for third. Gerhard Berger in the McLaren, Jean Alesi, the dynamic young Frenchman, in the Tyrrell, and Thierry Boutsen in the Williams, all three sharing 6 points. Sixth is Nelson Piquet in the Benetton, seventh Nigel Mansell in the other Ferrari, then comes Stefano Modena in the Brabham, and finally Satoru Nakajima in the other Tyrrell. In the Constructors' Championship, McLaren Honda have the lead with 19 points. 7 points behind them come Ferrari, and third Tyrrell DFR with 7. Williams are fourth with 6, Benetton fourth, fifth with 4, and finally Brabham Judd in 6th position. It's been 7 weeks since Brazil and the last Grand Prix, and since there's been plenty of off-track action, not to mention a few driver changes. Let's now meet the new drivers as they come up to the grid here at Imola. Here's Andrew Marriott.
So, as the Grand Prix season moves to Europe, let's recap on the runners and riders, and already there are some new faces. But this is not a new face. World champion Alain Prost has already taken the #1 Ferrari to victory in Brazil. Prost, after all those years in McLaren, has settled easily into the Ferrari team. Running at #2, Nigel Mansell, Britain's top hope. Nigel's season so far has been a little frustrating. 3 points from Brazil, scant reward for 2 hard drives. Now with Tyrrell, Satoru Nakajima of Japan. The former Lotus driver carries #3 and was in the points at Phoenix. But it was his teammate Jean Alesi who has proved the sensation of the season so far. He led at Phoenix and eventually finished second. And now he has the radical new Tyrrell, which has been impressive in testing, but still relies on venerable Cosworth horsepower. Carrying #5 Belgian's Thierry Boutsen, a twice win in the rain last season and a certain front-runner here. His teammate in an unchanged Williams squad, Grand Prix's most experienced driver, Riccardo Patrese. Here's a brand new face at Formula One. Appropriately at Brabham, it's British Formula 3 champion David Brabham, who takes over the #7 car from Gregor Wojtek. His teammate, birthday boy Stefano Modena, who hails from nearby Modena. He's 27 this weekend. Brabham, now owned by the Japanese Middlebridge Group, have a new car here, the stylish BT59 with Judd power, but Yamaha beckons. At #9, it's Michele Alboreto in the Footwork Arrows. Looking forward to Porsche power soon, and a newcomer at Arrows, Alex Caffey, now fully recovered from his pre-season injury. The Arrows team are another to benefit from a Japanese takeover. Delivery giant Footwork are now in charge, but Jackie Oliver and Alan Rees continue to operate the team. Lamborghini-powered Lotus have an all-British lineup, #11, Derek Warwick, and in the #12 car, it's Martin Donnelly. Running at 14 is the lone Ocella of Oliver Griard from the south of France. He has to pre-qualify this season, and with Cosworth power, that could be quite difficult. Here's a team with mountains to climb, Leighton House. In the 15 car, it's Mauricio Gugelmin of Brazil. In the 16 car, Ivan Capelli of Italy. Both cars failed to qualify in Brazil, but they're hoping for better things here at Imola. At 17, it's Gabriele Tarquini of Italy. At 18, Yannick Dalmas of France. AGF have a new factory, a new sponsor, new management, and a new car this year. Benetton are looking very good this season. In the #19 car, it's Sandro Nannini, and at #20, confounding his critics, Nelson Piquet, in the points in Phoenix and Brazil. Indeed, the 3 times champion could well return to the victory rostrum this season. At 21, it's Emanuele Pirro, and at 22, Andrea De Cesaris. The pair drive the Dallara Cosworths, who could surprise on the slower circuits. Minardi looked very good at Phoenix. Pierluigi Martini is at #23, with fellow Italian Paolo Barilla at 24. Nicola Larini, ex of Ocella, is now with Ligier Judd. His teammate at #26, the spectacular Philippe Alliot. Ligier seem to be getting their act together, but Alliot's crashes don't help. Winner in Phoenix, Ayrton Senna, nearly made it 2 in a row in Brazil, but then tripped over Satoru Nakajima. Looking for his Imola hat-trick, it's Senna at 27. Number 28 is Gerhard Berger, new to the McLaren team, and 2 fastest laps and second place in Brazil are already under his belt. Senna and Berger have set up a good working relationship at the McLaren team. The latest Marlboro McLaren Honda V10 is probably the most powerful car on the track, but a V12 engine is on the way. Still, definitely the team to beat. Talented Eric Bernard at number 29 has to pre-qualify the Lola LaRousse. So does number 30, that's Aguri Suzuki. The little Coloni squad with Subaru backing fall into the optimistic rather than serious category. Bertrand Gachot is the man who has to attempt to qualify the Coloni. Eurobun's Roberto Marino runs 33 and is another who has to pre-qualify, but he made the show in Phoenix. But his teammate Claudio Langes has so far failed to make the cut. Now at number 35, after 2 races with Brabham, is Swiss Gregor Wojtek, now with the Onyx team. His teammate, the talented Finn JJ Leto. And that team has been taken over by the Swiss car constructor Monteverdi. But there are problems on the horizon. Stefan Johansson is suing them, and their designer has also left the team. Finally, and it's no more than a joke, is the brave but misguided life car with W12 engine. Gary Brabham has given up the unequal struggle, and now Bruno Giacomelli, after 6 years away from Formula One, takes over the number 39 car. But will it ever race? The biggest pre-Imola story, perhaps, was the news that David Brabham had joined Brabham. Matthew Lorenzo asked him how he was settling in.
Well, I've had 3 days here in Imola, getting accustomed to everything. Did about probably 3 Grand Prix distances in 3 days, so I've done a lot of miles and learning much more than I've ever learnt. Looking forward to the weekend.
You've had time to assess the difference now. What would you say is the difference between Formula 3 and Formula 1?
The grip and the brakes. The brakes are braking later than a Formula 3 car, and everything happens so quickly that you don't get time to do everything you used to do. It's got to be much quicker. That takes a bit of time to get used to, so that's what I'm working on.
Despite the time you've had in the Brabham, there is a new Brabham to debut at Imola. How do you feel about that? Because you haven't actually driven it yet.
No, well, I've done 1 lap and we had a misfire, and then I had to jump back into the 58 to do some more miles. The cars haven't turned a wheel yet, but we think it's going to be okay. The car's lighter and it's got more horsepower, so hopefully it'll be a bit quicker.
Realistically, what are your ambitions for Imola?
I'd like to try and qualify first. Hopefully we can run quite smoothly with the new cars. Obviously, if we have problems, it's not going to look too good, but I'm fairly confident the cars will run well, and hopefully I get a good enough lap to qualify, and then hopefully finish the race.
Good luck.
Thanks.
The one thing David Brabham didn't have to worry about, of course, was pre-qualifying. Let's just look at the times now on that early Friday morning session. Eric Bernard and Aguri Suzuki at the top of the list with the LaRousse Lamborghinis. Third was Oliver Gruard in the Osella, and fourth, the final man to make the cut, Roberto Moreno in the Eurobahn. Bertrand Gachot didn't get in, neither did Claudio Langes, and Bruno Giacomelli, he only did a lap in the life. Also failing to make the cut, the 2 AGSs. Yannick Dalmas, with a damaged wrist, failed to show up, while Gabriel Tarquini failed to do a flying lap. An unhappy day for AGS.
Coming up, highlights of the first time practice session. Join us again in a couple of moments. Imola and Eurosport's coverage of the San Marino Grand Prix. Let's straight away join Andrew Marriott and John Watson for coverage of the first time practice session.
Well, thanks, Matthew. Now another group of cars going out for qualifying, well into the session now. And yes, it's Martin Donnelly, fellow Ulsterman, John Watson with me, of course. John, may you just take us round a lap with Martin?
Yes, well, Martin's just gone across the start-finish line and into the infamous Tamburello curve, this wonderfully long and flat-out 6th gear corner, 175 miles an hour. And coming down to one of the main overtaking points in the circuit, the Tossa hairpin bend, 2nd gear, all the way from 6th into 2nd, getting back on the par, taking 3rd quickly to try and avoid wheel spin. 4th gear, 5th gear, as he approaches the Piratella corner, this double left-hand corner that leads downhill again to the equally notorious Acqua Minerale. It's now a chicane, right, then left, and then actually into the Acqua Minerale itself, this double right-hand corner, uphill, running a little bit wide, getting the tail onto the rumble strips, back into 5th gear, coming up to what they call the high chicane, literal translation. 2nd gear, again, gentle on the par, back into 3rd, 4th, 5th gear, and if he's up at this point in the circuit, just on the minute, he would be on a very quick lap. Now into the Ravazza, back into 3rd gear, 4th gear before the second part of the Ravazza, and then accelerating hard again up into 5th, and almost coming up to the completion of his qualifying lap into the Marlborough chicane, the second part of it.
John, those brake ducts shaking around a lot.
Well, it is a Lotus, Andrew, but probably they shouldn't shake that much.
Just coming up with the computer. His time, we got it, 1 minute 27.1, and Martin goes 7th for now. Now it's Nigel Mansell out there. A lot of pressure on Nigel this weekend. A few sparks from the back of the car. And the circuit, of course, pretty close to the home of Ferrari. And the circuit itself named after Enzo and Dino Ferrari. Nigel had that cracked wrist since the last race, but it seems to be well healed, John.
Yes, well, he's been out playing quite a lot of golf, and he can play golf, he can drive a racing car, and it's an important race for Nigel because of all the pressure he's been getting since the Brazil Grand Prix. The Italian press have been giving him.
Look at that time, John. Mansell goes second. Mansell goes second now. So a quick time from him.
Well, that's what he needed for this practice session, to be at the top of the lists, and he'll feel much happier now as a result of that quick lap.
Well, we've already seen Senna out once. He'll be going for a quick one fairly soon, I would suggest.
I wonder, are we going to see the customary Senna performance, going out almost cold and laying down one of those unbelievably fast qualifying laps. He's got over 40 of them now in his relatively short Grand Prix career, and it's really quite staggering that the guy still can get into the car, go out and perform miracles, and he's amazing.
Well, there he is on the way back to the pits. And this morning I saw a van driving in from Ferrari. It's probably got the super-duper qualifying engine, which they only finished tuning last night, John.
Well, of course, being in pole position at Imola is vitally important for Ferrari. Imola is in the backyard, and anything that helps them get onto the front row or pole position is going to be a big bonus.
They see Senna's already done the 24.4, and Mansell definitely in the ballpark. And now Alessandro Nannini, who had quite a big shunt this morning in practice. And there's the winner of the previous Grand Prix, Alain Prost, going out to attempt a quick lap in his Ferrari.
Alain Prost is not only the master of the racetrack, he's the master of the Italian language, which has been a big problem for Nigel recently.
And Gerhard Berger now looks as if he's on a quick one, starting a quick one, I think, John.
Yes, he came out of the corner very quickly and trying to get that Japanese horsepower down to the ground as quickly as he can. The car fidgeting a little bit coming out of the chicane, but that's normal when a car is on a very quick lap.
It's just gone past the point where he crashed, and he's certainly attacking there.
His confidence is actually gaining every time he gets in the car. You know, being a part of McLaren is quite a different team to being part of Ferrari, and learning McLaren's way of doing things is something that comes with the job, and he now appears to be settling into the team. They've made the car more comfortable for him to drive. The problem of cramp is something they're overcoming. Now, there's a yellow flag. Now, why is that being waved?
Doesn't seem to have slowed him up much.
No, he hasn't, and normally you are meant to respect that flag when it's waved at you. There was a car parked in the inside of the corner, so it was probably just to warn you that there was a parked car, but it was well off the track.
Yeah, Gerhard, of course, has already had 2 fastest laps so far this season in the races. Of course, we saw him crash out at Phoenix. He admits that was his own mistake. And they had a very good race, second place in Brazil. And he's certainly keeping Ayrton Senna honest, no question doubt about that, as he just throws up a puff of dust as he comes out of that one. And it looks like a quick one to me.
Yes, it is. He's made best use of his qualifying tyres. Goodyear have got new qualifying tyres here. They're much better than the previous tyres they had, and I think that's helped both Berger and McLaren a great deal today.
On the Longines monitor, Berger goes fastest. Berger's fastest, 1 minute 24.173. Gerhard Berger on the pole. Well, what's Alan Prost going to think about that? What's Ayrton Senna going to think about it? Riccardo Patrese, he's another man who went well in practice this morning. The Williams team may have some late revisions to the car. They're even testing on Wednesday at Donington, on Thursday at Donington.
Indeed, in fact, I saw the truck. I was leaving Silverstone. As I left the circuit, I saw their truck going to Donington. So that just shows you the pressure that is in Formula One today, that teams are prepared to go testing on the day when they're really meant to be at the racetrack they're competing at. So those very last-minute revisions to the Williams car are paying penalties, paying bonuses. So Patrese is also taking advantage of that.
And also that latest RS02 Renault engine, that superb V10. They've upgraded it since Brazil, and it's meant to have more power, and it is definitely one of the most powerful engines. And there Patrese, the most experienced man in Grand Prix racing, still enjoying his racing, indeed enjoying it more than ever. The Patrick Head designed Williams FW13, no superstitions for the Didcot team. Into the final chicane, let's see what sort of time he gets. 1 minute 24.4, third fastest. Patrese goes third.
That's a good time, a very good time indeed for the Williams and Patrese.
Nigel Mansell out again on his second set of qualifiers, I think, John.
Yes, he's had a frustrating practice really so far. Although he was second quickest early on, he's been balked a couple of times, so now he's really trying to make the best of these qualifying tyres. They're good for about 1 lap, maybe 1.5 laps, but really that's it if you get caught.
He is being caught.
Yes, he is.
Yes, he's caught behind Oliver Gruillard. Oh, he's not happy about that, is he?
No, well, that gesture he's made is fairly familiar amongst racing drivers.
Shaking his fist.
Well, I think that's what it was, yes. He's not a happy boy, and entitled to be so. Gruillard, I think, was sleeping. He really should have been more aware of Mansell approaching him.
Well, they're showing us again. John, take us through it.
Well, Gruillard just didn't see Mansell behind him, and of course he's just cruising. He's Sunday afternoon drive. I mean, he could have had the wife and kids with him, the speed he was going at. And that's really irresponsible, I believe, on Gruillard's part.
Yeah, the man from the south of France. Oh, look at that, big shunt for Martini. He looks all right, he's certainly moving in the car. Look at the front of the car.
That's a bad accident. The front of the car actually, well, in fact, the car in front of the dashboard has been torn off. He's hit that tyre barrier very, very hard indeed. You can see...
Trapped by his legs, I think.
Yes, I would think. Let's have a look at it and see. We've got a slow motion replay of the incident. He's turning in. This is the Acqua Minerale corner, the second part of it. He's got a lot of understeer. The front of the car is pushing. It's not gripping. And he's really run wide. He's missed the second part, the apex of that second part of the corner. And you can see his hands are getting crossed over, so the back of the car is now slid wide. A lot of dust, and we're getting some, see the tyre smoke, the whiff of tyre smoke from the front wheels.
He's doing something with his hand.
Yes, he's taken his left hand off the steering wheel. And oh, bang! That was a heavy, heavy impact. That was very heavy indeed.
They've got truck tyres there. Usually they protect the Armco with car tyres. They're using truck tyres.
Yeah, but that's almost, I would say, too solid a tyre wall. You want those tyres to absorb impact. That's like hitting something solid. But fortunately, we've seen Pierluigi Martini moving.
He's throwing up his hand saying, please go and help me.
Yeah, but the front of the car is very severely damaged indeed. And in fact, what makes you wonder, the new regulations are designed to save drivers, but the front of his car has literally been ripped off.
Well, there he's on the stretcher. They've got the drip in, but that's a fairly standard practice these days. Just stabilising him out of the car reasonably quickly, and he's raising his head there.
Yes, he's lucid, and basically he seems to have movement of all his limbs. It was just that the front impact of the car pushed it 90 degrees to the straight ahead, so his legs were somewhere in that. But luckily, Martini is a very short driver. You can see how much of the front of the car has been chopped off. And in fact, the nose of the car, the part of the car that hit the barrier, is relatively undamaged. So the new regulations while they've served a point, have actually transferred the weakest part of the chassis to being the part that's broken away, which is just in front of the dashboard.
Well, practice restarted, and it's that man Senna out. Ayrton Senna definitely on a quick one here. The shrill Honda V10 screaming behind his ears. The circuit really plunges down. The TV cameras don't show it that well, but it really goes down steeply in that spot.
Yes, I think it's a great racetrack because it's got elevation. It's almost like a road track. It is an artificial circuit, but they've managed to combine the landscape of the Imola track very, very well indeed, and it does, I think, provide a very enjoyable circuit for the Grand Prix drivers.
Well, we'll be watching to see what time Senna does. These times come up so quickly these days. 1 minute 24.080. Senna's on the pole. Senna is on the pole. But Gerhard Berger, he's been on a quick lap too. And Berger snatched it from Ayrton Senna. Gerhard Berger with a 1:24.027 has snatched pole position from his teammate. But Nigel Mansell, what's happened to him? He's walking back. Been a torrid practice for him.
Yes, he doesn't look too happy, but Nigel's got the look on his face, and here we're going to see what's happened.
That's Barilla spinning off.
Barilla and the other Martini.
He's going to get Mansell. Oh, so close, and he just misses the front end of Mansell. Mansell read that well, John.
Yes, and it's not a Martini he's in, it's a Minardi he's in, of course. That was very lucky for Mansell. In fact, I think he must have seen Barilla coming across because he actually took avoiding action, drove onto the grass. So well done, Nigel. But of course, that's the reason why we saw him out of the car walking back to the pits.
So let's look at the final times. Gerhard Berger fastest, 1:24.027. Senna second, 24.079. Then it's Petresi and Mansell, Boutsen and Prost, Alesi in 7th place, Nelson Piquet in 8th. Then still in 9th place, but he won't be racing, of course, Pierluigi Martini. And the big news is that he has only chipped a bone in his ankle. He may even be back in time for Monaco. Rounding out the top 10, Alessandro Nannini. Good time from Martin Donnelly in his first season, remember. Martin Donnelly, 12th fastest. Derek Warwick, he's in 19th place. And then David Brabham, all kinds of problems with the new Brabham Dirk Judd. He's back in 30th position. So Matthew Lorenzo, myself, Andrew Marriott, and of course John Watson, it's goodbye. Join us for final qualifying.